baby, here I go. Start the show, beat on my heart, now about to explode. I'm about to explode. Feel good, what I'm feeling.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Ignite Your True Self. I am Ericka Sallee, your host for tonight's conversation, and I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the show. So as we are getting started, if you happen to be joining live, then I do encourage you to invite your friends to be part of tonight's conversation. For those of you who may be joining me for the first time, let me take this opportunity to welcome you to the show and to just take a really brief moment to introduce myself. I am a speaker, self-help author, and transformation success coach. And I get really, really excited about sharing with women and organizations all things best version of yourself. What does that really mean? Well, it means that as a result of my personal coaching and professional development programs, I help my clients, women and organizations, to figure out what stands in the way of their success. And the best part about that relationship is that then I get to share strategies to help my clients to move beyond those barriers to, yes, create the best versions of themselves, which is also equated to your true self. So tonight, this whole idea of igniting your true self is what helps you to get to that best version. So you may hear me saying best version, you may hear me saying true self, you may hear me saying your true synergy, which really is the essence of who you were created to be. So personally and professionally, mind, body, spirit, all of those things are aligned and you are living fulfilled and purposeful. So when I use those terms, I use them interchangeably. And so these conversations are just an opportunity where I get to share little nuggets, the things that may be standing in your way, the things that when you think about doing something or you're trying to move forward in a certain way to better yourself, it may just be that some of these things that I'm sharing with you in this show are some of the things that are just causing you to pause, causing you to second guess, causing you to sometimes stop and never even go back to it again. So I'm hoping that if you are joining me tonight, and if you want to go back and check out all of the other shows since January when we kicked off the show, then you can go to my YouTube channel, you can browse the titles, and you can select whichever one resonates with you. As a matter of fact, why don't you go back and listen to them all? And then you can come back next week and join me for the show next week and the show after that and the show after that. And so I got to tell you, like today was about 80-ish degrees here in Maryland. And while it is springtime, it's certainly not summer. And it feels like summer. We got a storm about to roll in. And so I'm hoping that I can get through all of what I want to share with you in this show tonight before any rumble of thunder comes through. So if you happen to be hanging out with me for the first time, or if you are a return visitor like my girl Jaquista, who is always here hanging out with me, and I got to tell you, you make my evening. So as much as I'm sharing this information with you tonight, when I see you on with me live, it makes me excited as well. So happy Thursday to you. And so I cannot let this conversation go any further without saying that it is Black Women's History Month. So let me just kind of go back. So February was Black History Month, and March was Women's History Month, and now we are in April, and so it is Black Women's History Month. And it's exciting to me to know that, you know, women kind of span all three of those. That just lets you know how powerful we really are. And so I wanted to just kick off this show tonight by declaring myself as a Black woman making history. There, I said it, I declared it for myself. And so if you too are watching as a Black woman, then understand that you are making history in your own right. And so I get excited about making history because I do believe that what I share and the gifts that God has given me to impart into my clients really does make a difference. And that makes me excited, and it lets me know that I'm part of a much larger conversation when it comes to uplifting us as women. It doesn't take away from anyone else who is not a Black woman, but it just means that because we often are at the bottom of the list sometimes, and we have that double whammy. We know how it is when women are trying to make their mark, or trying to, have equal pay and equal rights and all the things that come along with what men are doing. Then just imagine, as a Black woman, there are some extra added things that come into play when we are trying to be part of that history. And so I salute every woman, but I especially salute Black women on this month. And I just want to say that I'm super excited about who I am and how I'm showing up in the world, and even more so learning to continue doing it to the best of my ability. So on that note, let's go ahead and jump into the topic for tonight's show. So tonight we're talking about why you keep postponing your happiness. Now, I know that's a long title, but just think about that. Why you keep postponing your happiness. Now, here's the thing. I'm sure that many of us watching this, I'm going to raise my hand and say, I've been there, done that. And sometimes we got to catch ourselves. But how easy is it for you to cheer for other people, right? You could be the rah-rah person. You got the pom-poms, you got the cheerleading outfit, you got the bullhorn, and you're just putting it out there for everybody else, right? It's so very easy for you to do that and ensure somebody else's happiness. So here's what I want you to do. If this sounds familiar, I want you to type it in the comments. You can, if there's an opportunity for you to put a little raising my hand emoji in the comments, do that. But have you ever said, as long as you're happy, I'm happy. As long as so-and-so is happy, as long as my sister's happy, as long as my spouse is happy, as long as my manager's happy, as long as my friends are happy, then I'm happy. Have you ever said that? Go ahead, type it in the comments, and you can be honest. As long as you're good, I'm good, right? So Jaquisa says, thunder came and went here in Baltimore. Okay, all right. Well, I don't know if it's coming up this way, but sky's getting pretty dark. So we're going to see what happens. So if you have ever said, as long as you fill in the blank, okay. So I thank you. Appreciate your honesty. As long as so-and-so is happy, then I'm happy. I'm good. So let me just, first of all, explain before I get into the tips that I want to share with you. It's not completely wrong to say that, right? As long as, because you want to make sure that the people that you are connected to are happy. You don't want to do anything or say anything to hurt them or cross them or make them feel some kind of way or be rude or ignorant or insensitive or unempathetic, not compassionate. Like, you don't want to do those things. So when we say, as long as somebody is happy, then I'm good, there's two ways to look at that. There is the part of you that is exercising that human connection, right? Like, I want to make sure that I'm not hurting somebody. So as long as they're happy, as long as they're good, I'm okay. So that is okay. But here's the part where we kind of get into a little bit of the danger zone. And that is when we sometimes use the phrase and it excludes anything that makes you happy. Okay. So I just want to say that again. So if you say, as long as you're happy, I'm good, it's fine when you use it in the context of making sure that you are being nice to people, that you are being kind, that you are looking out for someone. And connecting in the human way that I often talk about here on this show. I talk about it with my clients. I talk about it on social media. But when it comes down to it, if the only thing we are doing is being intentional about helping someone else and making them happy all the time at the expense of ourselves, that's when it gets a little dicey. And so I want to dig into that a little bit because that's really what we want to talk about. So why you keep postponing your happiness. So let me say this. And so if you've ever I don't know, this show, if you've ever worked with me before, if you've ever seen anything that I've posted, if I've ever done a live, I've often said this, and that is that, mindset, what we think, and language, what we say, are often dictators, precursors to, prerequisites to, dependencies for what we do. Okay. So the way we think, mindset, what we say, language, our words often connect to our behavior. So language and the way we think begins to create a new belief system. Just go with me for a minute. So the very first thing when you think about, well, why am I postponing my happiness? Well, sometimes we don't think we deserve to be happy. Sometimes we look at experience, what we've been through, what we've done, what we've said, what other people have said to us, what other people have done to us, and it's made us feel some kind of way. And so, because of that, we oftentimes think, well, I don't deserve to be happy because I did X. Well, I don't deserve to be happy because I said this. And I don't deserve to be happy because my mama, my grandmama, my grandmother, my grandfather, my sister, my cousin, my husband, my this, my that said that I'm not good enough to be happy. So, the first thing I want you to understand is that there's a very simple mantra, a very simple declaration that simply says, I deserve happiness. Or you can say, I deserve to be happy. Fill it in however you want. But the reason why we sometimes postpone it, or sometimes we don't think we deserve it, is because I've been in an experience, I've been in a conversation, I've been with a person, I've been whatever, I've been saying all these things in my head, I've been looking at myself in the mirror and like, well, why should I be happy? Why should I want to be happy? Well, they said and they treat me. And so we get it in our mind and we get it in our spirit and we start to embody that. But what I want you to know tonight is to own a new mantra, own a new way of thinking. And that is to simply say to yourself, I deserve happiness. I deserve to be happy. It is just that simple. Now, I know that there's some work that goes behind that, and I'm going to get into that in just a few moments with the other tips. But one of the things that, if you've been following this show for any period of time, a lot of times the beginning of the shift comes just by the declarations and the things that we say and the things that we believe about ourselves. So we talk about igniting our true selves. It first starts with a thought. And so you and I have to understand that it doesn't matter what happened yesterday, last week, last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when we were a child. Those are part of the richness of who we are, those stories, those experiences. But it doesn't have to dictate the fact that here we are right now in this moment in time, understanding I deserve happiness. I deserve happiness. So if you are watching this right now, I want you to just say it to yourself. I deserve happiness. Like, listen to the vibration of your voice and the sound that reverberates. I think I said that right. Through your being. I deserve happiness. And if you want to get bold, type it in the comments. I deserve happiness. Own that. Understand it, own it, speak it, say it, write it, and just get it in your mind that says, I deserve happiness. I don't care what's going on right now. I don't care what happened. I deserve happiness. That is the very beginning of owning this idea of, you mean to tell me I've been postponing and delaying my happiness just because I didn't believe I deserved it? Ooh, okay. All right. So now is a new day. So I'm getting ready to say to myself, I deserve happiness. Say it with me. I deserve happiness. Say it one more time. I deserve happiness, or I deserve to be happy. Okay. So if before you came into this conversation, You start asking yourself questions like, oh, I'm not sure if let tonight be the night or the afternoon or the morning, whatever time you happen to be seeing this, be the day when you say, oh, let me change this around a little bit. Yep, I deserve happiness. So there you go, typing it in the comments. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. And, let me say this really quickly before we move on, is that there's something that starts to happen when we start to change up the way we think and what we say. And I know you might be saying, well, right now there's a lot of stuff going on, and I get it. But when we get into the habit of practicing a different language, there are things that start to happen because we're putting out a different kind of energy into our atmosphere that then begins to allow things to align with what it is that we're saying. So when you say, I deserve happiness, and you keep saying it, when you keep saying it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm starting to believe that. So let me keep saying it, and then allow that all the things that make you happy begin to show up for you. Okay, so let me move on, because I know this right here could just be a place that I could stay for the entire time of the conversation. But I know we have a limited amount of time, so I do want to move on. So here's the second part. So we have a tendency to complicate things, right? I'm going to raise my hand and I'm just going to say, I know that I do it. Sometimes we overanalyze and we think that in order for us to be happy, that all things, all conditions have to be met, right? And I'll be the first to tell you, I was literally having a conversation with someone earlier today, and I gotten a message, right? And I'm listening to the text message, and there's a couple different things in the message. And I was like, okay, so is this the part I should focus on? Or is this the part I should focus on? And I just had to stop, and I laughed at myself, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to analyze it. I'm not going to overanalyze it, because I was starting to go down this rabbit hole and, should I focus on this part? Should I focus on this part? When it was really simpler than what I was making it. So sometimes we have a tendency to go too far, too fast, and we miss it. And so my second tip for you tonight is to make happiness simple. Make happiness simple. And you might say, well, Ericka, well, what do you mean make happiness simple? So here's the thing. And this might draw the parallel. And I was having another conversation earlier too. And we were talking about retirement. And so the conversation was, hey, when I retire, I want to travel, I want to enjoy, I want to do this, that, and the other. And I said, why wait until retirement? Because there may be a big gap between now and then. And so does that mean that in between time, you're not doing anything to enjoy yourself? Now, that's not what this person was saying, but it was just part of our conversation, because a lot of times that's what some people do. It's like, well, when I retire, I'm going to, or, when I get this new job, I'm going to, like, we wait for all the conditions to line up. And while there may be certain things that have to happen when those conditions are just so and have progressed to a point where it's like, okay, I can do this now. In some cases, yes, that does make sense. But when we talk about why I'm postponing my happiness, it's sometimes because we're waiting for all these other conditions to show up. And at the end of the day, there's lots of conditions in our space right now that we can lean on to be happy. And so keeping it simple, like, oh gosh, you know what? Just the fact that I woke up, and this might align with the idea of gratitude as well, right? It can show up, both these types of examples can show up in a sense of gratitude and a sense of happiness. So just go with me. But you might say, you know what? I woke up this morning and the sun was shining, and oh my gosh, just knowing that and seeing it makes me happy. I was standing in my kitchen, speaking of sunshine. This was a few weeks back, and I wasn't really sure. I knew the experience that I was having in that moment for me, but I wasn't sure how I was going to share it or if I was going to share. So here I am. So I'm in my kitchen, and I've been in this spot a million times. Like, I have lived in this house for 15 years. So I've gone through this in this very same spot. I can't even tell you how many times. But this particular day, I'm standing in the kitchen, and the sun on the other side of this wall is my family room. And so I have these high windows. Sun was beaming down through the window right here, directly into this kitchen spot where I was standing. And I'm standing there, and it was almost like I was being drenched with sunshine. Like I had just come downstairs to go to the kitchen. I don't even know what I was going for. And I happened to look up, and I was like, man, the sun. And I just stood there, and I literally stood there with my eyes closed, and I was just taking in that sun. Can I tell you that made me happy? Because I felt like there was this glow coming in, and I had a whole lot of stuff going on at the time. I'm trying to process and think through certain things. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And when I stood there, it was almost as if the light was shining on me in a way to suggest it's going to be okay. That made me happy. So when I say make happiness simple, there are so many things around us. You might wake up and hear the birds chirping. And I know you might say, oh, this is Pollyanna. This is like, oh, but this is part of what we sometimes miss, because we're trying to make sure that our happiness is conditional, that if this is the case, then I'll be happy. Well, what if we reverse it and said, well, I'll be happy in spite of this case, or I'll be happy and I just know that this case is going to work out, or it's going to turn out in my favor. So there's a different perception when we just make happiness simple. It might be a conversation that you have with someone. I was out walking yesterday, got a FaceTime call from one of my cousins, and that made me happy because I hadn't like physically seen her. She hadn't physically seen me. And we just started talking, and it was just, and it was a wonderful conversation. That made me happy. So you might be connected with someone, or maybe there's something that you watch on television that makes you laugh, or maybe there's something that you really enjoy eating and you take your time to chew it and enjoy the flavors and all the deliciousness of that dish. That is making happy simple. So you don't necessarily have to wait for the right relationship. You don't necessarily have to wait for the right job. You don't necessarily have to wait for all the money to be in the account to say, well, wait a minute, I haven't missed a meal. That's happy. And the meals that I'm eating makes me feel good. That makes me happy. You know what? I might be waiting for this next job or this next position, but in the meantime, this is allowing me to pay my bills, keep the roof over my head, put some gas in my car. That makes me happy. And I know there's a whole lot of stuff going on around, in, through, above, below, every which way that you can think of, stuff is happening. But if we waited for all of the outer stuff to get itself together, oh, we might be waiting for a long time, because there's a whole lot of work that has to be done outside of us. And I'm not going to get into that. There's a whole lot. And that energy might not be the kind of energy that I want tonight or that I want to give to you. But just understand what I'm basically saying is that we get to create in spite of. So making happiness simple is just basically saying, hey, listen, I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it for me. I'm not going to wait for everything to be just so. If I sat here and said to you, I'm waiting for the millions to show up in my bank account and then I'm going to be happy. Now, is that crazy? Because even with what I have, the things that I have been able to do, it makes me happy. It makes me grateful. It makes me joyful. It makes me humble. So make happiness simple. You have to find happiness in the small things. That right there is exactly what this tip is intended to show. Find happy in the smallest things. It could be yesterday, took my son. He had a doctor's appointment, not dentist, eye appointment. I had to think about it. Got glasses sitting right here. He had an eye appointment. We left the eye appointment. I was like, let's stop and get some ice cream. So we stop, we get ice cream, and I wanted to like sit in the car in the parking lot so we could eat our ice cream, because I wanted to enjoy mine. It was hot yesterday, and I was like, if I wait till I get home, this is going to be melted and it's going to be nothing but soupy, and I didn't want that. So we're sitting in the car, and my kids always tease me, and there's some truth to what they're saying. I like a certain kind of music, right? I typically like old school R&B. I never really have been too much into rap or hip hop. And so they always say, Mom, you need to listen to some new music. So we're sitting in the car, eating our Frosties and dipping our French fries in the Frosties. Oh, that's so good. If you've never done it, try it. So we're sitting there. And so he's got his music playing. And I said, wait. I got somebody that I want you to listen to. I had heard a song, and I'm gonna make this quick, but I gotta share this. So it was a song that I heard. Someone that I follow on Instagram put this person on her story. And when I listened to this artist's voice, I had never heard of her before. And I was just like, oh, I was just drawn in. So I'm excited to share this with my son, because they don't think I listen to music. I was like, I listen to more music than you think I do. So I'm playing this, and I was like, see, this is, we listen to the song. But in that moment, it was just he and I eating our Frosties, dipping our French fries, listening to the music. Now, I still had other stuff that needed to be done, decisions that need to be made, stuff to check off my to. I had all of that. But yesterday, I was like, oh, this is making me happy. I had the sunroof open because the sun was shining real nicely. And that allowed me to keep happiness simple. Wasn't a whole lot of fanfare, wasn't a whole lot of fluff, wasn't a whole lot of everything's worked out. All the conditions were not perfect, but that moment was happy, and it was simple. Frosty, French fries, and a little music. Seeing God's grace in your life feels even better. Absolutely. So let me get into the third tip, and then I'll close it out for tonight. So I was at the nail salon today, and they had the television on, and the Tamron Hall show was on, and Stephanie Mills was one of the guests. And I remember Stephanie Mills from way back in the day, when she played a star in The Wiz, and I don't even know how old she was at the time. I'm gonna say 11 or 12. That might not be right. Don't quote me on it. She was young. But here's what she said. She said, and she looked absolutely gorgeous. She had this beautiful green suit on, and her hair was beautiful, and her makeup. And she came out, and she said, as part of the conversation, she said, I have been making sure that my son is okay. I have been a mother. I've been making sure that everything's okay with him, that he's good. And she said, now I'm not just a mom, but I'm getting my sexy on at 66. This is what she said. And first of all, I was like 66, because when you see her, and I was looking, I was like, there's no way, man, beautiful. 66. Actually, nowadays, 66 is like the new 46. And in some cases, the new 36. But anyway, so I'm listening to her, and I'm thinking, how many other women can say that same statement, or that same story is a part of your story, that I've been a mom, I've been a wife, I've been a friend, I've been an employee, I've been a good neighbor, I've been to everybody else. And now she said, but you know what? I know my son is good. So I'm more than just mom. Now I'm investing in me. So when I heard that, it made me think about tip number 3, which is, have you ever stopped to think about what your happiness looks like? Like, if someone said to you today, like what I'm saying, what is it that would make you happy? What would you say? Have you ever taken the time to write down the things that make you happy? Now, I'm going to suggest that you do this. And I should have had this written out before we started, but I'm going to take the time to do it because I think it's just that important. See, sometimes when we talk about happiness, it's with the assumption that we have defined what it looks like for us. But just in case you haven't, I want you to do two things, okay? I want you to make a list, and actually, if you're listening to this and you happen to be moving and you can't stop, I'm going to share this, and you can do this when you get to a place when you can actually sit down. So I want you to take a piece of paper, and I want you to make two columns, okay? On the first column, I want you to write things that only involve me. And this is things that make your happiness, what makes you happy, things that only involve you. And I'm going to show it to you in a second. Things that involve other people. Okay. All right. So let me just, so you're making two columns. And I don't know if because of the glare of the ring light. So on one side, when you think about, well, what makes me happy? List the things that only involve you, okay? In the first column. The second column, I want you to write things that involve other people. So it might be things that only involve me. A couple of things that makes me happy is when I get to sit down and watch the shows that I've DVR'd. And I'm laughing at them. One of which is Abbott Elementary. That's one of my favorite shows. So I'm sitting, I'm watching, and I'm just chilling, enjoying it. Another thing that makes me happy that only involves me is when I get to have popcorn and wine. Popcorn is probably my favorite snack. Glass of wine. Things that make me happy that only involve me is when I get to sit in my bathtub, I take a bath, I drink my coffee, or if I'm taking a bath at night, I drink my wine. Things that make me happy that involve me sometimes, not all the time if I'm watching sports with someone else, but when I'm watching by myself, that makes me happy. When I can get up in the morning and have that sunshine experience that I talked about, those are things that only involve me. So I want you to think about the things that make you happy that you don't need anybody else around to help you do, or to do with you, or to acknowledge you for. Okay, let that be the first column. The second column is things that involve other people, because obviously we have connections with people. We go out with our family, with our friends. Maybe we go to sporting events. We go grab a cup of coffee. We go have dinner. Maybe there's some happy hour that you have with your coworkers. Now, I know some people are like, I don't want to deal with my coworkers. Well, not everybody has that experience. So that might make you happy. So maybe you're a grandparent or a godparent or an aunt, an uncle, and you say, you know what, I love to be with my children or my grandchildren. That's what makes me happy. A friend of mine posted something, I guess a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, I don't know, where she took her granddaughter out, and they had went to a museum, they had lunch, they had spa day. And just the joy that I could see in her experience with her granddaughter clearly said that this is what makes her happy, and it involves someone else. So I want you to have two lists, okay? I'm going to show this again. Again, one side is the things that make you happy that only involve you, things that make you happy that involve other people. Now, there's a couple things that are going to happen when you do this. Number one, if you've never, ever taken the time to think about what makes you happy, this list is intended to help you to start thinking about that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that when you write out your list, observe which one of the lists is longer. So if you only have things, or you have more things on the side that says things that make me happy that involve other people, then give yourself a chance to think about, well, what makes me happy when I'm not with other people? You owe it to yourself to think about what goes on this side. And I know sometimes, and this is a conversation for another time, but I do want to say this, that sometimes we don't like being with ourselves. We're afraid to do things on our own. We're like, there's no way I could do anything by myself that makes me happy. I'm going to challenge you, if that is your thought, to rethink that. And I really want you to spend some time exploring some things that only you can do. It might be taking an art class, a music class, a cooking class, and while that might involve other people in the class, maybe you just go by yourself. You don't have to go with your friends. You have to go with your spouse. I love to go out and have dinner by myself, or go have breakfast by myself. And it's like, I can't. So think about how these lists look. And you might say to yourself, well, my list of the things that only I do is longer than this side, things that involve other people. So you might say to yourself, well, maybe that means that I can connect or find ways to connect with people. And I know this is a subject that I'm not going to touch upon too much tonight, but the other part of happy is really carving out the right people that you can connect with, because sometimes we're in toxic spaces with toxic people, and that drains our happiness. And so we want to be mindful of that as well. But I really want you to write the things that make you happy. This is tip number 3. This is probably the most important of the 3 tips that I'm sharing tonight, because then it allows you to put something on paper to say, oh, wait, you know what? I've never given myself a chance to think about this. And so if you haven't, then this is the time to do it. And here's the last thing I'm going to share. And when I was thinking about this, I was like, is this really connected? But I do feel like it is. I feel like there is a part of our happiness that leads us to purposeful living. And so I talk about this in my book, Pathway to Purpose, Find It, Follow It, Fulfill It. You can find it on Amazon. I'm going to read this one part that talks of this chapter 3, what would you do for free? It's basically the same thing as what I'm saying here. It's giving yourself an opportunity to get some things out of here and get it on paper. So I talk about, sometimes we're at a standstill, and we've got roadblocks, and we're trying to figure out, like, if I weren't doing this, then what would I do? And that sometimes, that is what leads us to purpose, and purpose makes us happy because we're doing something that makes us feel good and all those things. So let me say this really quickly. So here's what I say. It's similar to me telling you to create these 2 columns. First, get yourself a journal or piece of paper like I just showed you. And then write down the things that come to you through the course of a day. Like if you're going through something and you say, oh, when I do this, this really makes me feel good. Or, when I do this, this really makes me happy. I get excited about this. Like that's something that you want to be mindful on this list. So I'm basically saying, hey, get a journal, get something that you can write with. Maybe you can, it might be a small little pocket size, something that you can keep. I had one under here under my desk. Actually, it's right here. Here's a little pocket journal. So you might say, well, what is it that makes me happy? You can carry this around and just make notes of things, especially if you haven't really done the exercise before. And so then I go on to say that as different things come up during the course of the day, write them down. So as you're experiencing something, you say, oh gosh, this makes me happy. Let me write this down. And tune into those things. So then you really get connected with how you're feeling as you're experiencing these things, because then that's when you say, oh, that's what happiness feels like. And I guarantee you, then when you do that, it's going to take you back to tip number 2 when you say, oh, you mean to tell me my happiness is simpler than I thought? Because as I'm writing these things down, I'm recognizing that, oh, this makes me happy. Oh, this makes me happy. You mean lighting a candle and just sitting, listening to music, dancing, singing makes me happy? Oh, that's what simple and happy feels like. Okay. So just wanted to just kind of bring that up. And then I go on to say, just then as you start to tune into some of those things, how that leads to purpose. But I'm not going to get into that right now. But here's what I will say. And if you want to read the rest of what's in the chapter and you want to read the other chapters, then I do encourage you to go to Amazon and you can get your copy of Pathway to Purpose. Lots of other things in there that feed into this conversation about happiness and why we should stop postponing it. So at the end of the day, and here's probably a good place to just wrap up. At the end of the day, we know that there's so much going on. And so why wait to be happy? Like, why wait to figure out, to discover? And then when you make this list, then say, you know what? Let me do more of it. Because there might be things that you put on this list and you realize, you know what? I haven't done that in a while. And so it's intended to draw your attention to things that make you happy. Or you might even say, I've been thinking about doing X. Or I've never been to a restaurant by myself. Maybe I'll try that. And you might discover, that does make me happy. So let me do more of it. So when you come up with this list, I want you to look at it. And then I want you to say to yourself, okay, so let me keep doing it, or let me do more of it. Because that's when you really start to be actionable about your happiness. Okay. So I had to think hard to find something that makes me happy. But I must say, putting together a puzzle, drinking wine, and listening to Britney Spears. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. That's where the simple comes in. Let me just read that again before I close out. First of all, I had to think hard to find something that makes me happy. I know this is not the only person who has had to think hard about what makes you happy, right? Not the only person. And more than likely, and I don't want to speak for, but I do want to say, more than likely, I bet you that while it was hard for you to think about what made you happy, I bet you could pinpoint or you could participate in other people's happiness. Okay. I don't know that to be true. If that's true, you can type it in the comment. But she says that putting together a puzzle, drinking wine, and listening to Britney Spears, that is simple, right? Now, if it's a 1,000-piece puzzle, I might have to throw that in the trash. But that makes you happy, and that's all that matters, right? So, oh my gosh. All right. So I'm going to quickly go back through these tips, and then I'm going to let you all go. So tonight we were talking about what or why you keep postponing your happiness. Number one, because sometimes you think you might not deserve happiness, but your declaration after tonight's conversation is, yes, I deserve happiness. Point blank, just that simple. End of sentence, period. All right. The second tip, to make happiness simple. All the conditions don't have to be perfect. As a matter of fact, there is no perfection. So you don't have to have everything lined up. You don't have to use the mantra like, when I retire, then I'm going to travel. No, do it now. So when you make happiness simple, it means that you're observing and you're taking in so many things that are happening right in front of you that make you happy. It could be a meal. It could be a bottle of wine. As Jaquisa said, it could be a puzzle. It could be listening to music, but keep it simple. And literally, because of the way the world is, and I didn't say this in the beginning, but because of the way the world is, slow down and say it, because of the way the world is, it's almost like we have to find something that makes us happy. Just for our own mental, physical, and spiritual sanity. Okay. And then the last tip was to write the things that make you happy. And I encourage you to do 2 lists. On the one side is things that only I do by myself and things that I need other people or other people are involved in. And kind of take a look at the list and do your best to bring harmony to the list, right? So, not to have so many things that only you do where you miss a connection with other people, and not to have so much of a connection with other people and maybe making them happy and missing the opportunity to do it for yourself. So just kind of look at what shows up on your list. And then make it actionable. So when you think about it, you write it down, then look and say, you know what, I'm going to do more of this, or I'm going to incorporate some other things and just continue to focus on my happiness because I deserve it. So on that note, I'm going to encourage you to do a couple of things. Number one, if you have questions about anything that I've mentioned on tonight's conversation, or maybe you've gone back to look at some of the other videos on YouTube and you're saying to yourself, oh my goodness, there's so much that's happening in my space and I'm trying to figure out what it needs to look like for me, and you want to have further conversation about what things might look like for you and how I can help support you, then go visit my website, www.truesynergy.org. At the top of the page, there is an opportunity to contact me, and you can reach out and say, hey, can we just spend 30, 45 minutes in a discovery session? Here's what's going on with me. What does that really mean? And how do I move forward? So if that is you and you're thinking about that, then I do encourage you to reach out that way. You can also check out my other social media connections on my link tree, which is linktree underscore or True Synergy underscore. You can see that going through the bottom of your screen right now. And then I also encourage you to join me next week for Ignite Your True Self. Next week, we'll be talking about, oh, no, not why you keep postponing your happiness, because we just talked about that. We are going to be talking about, I didn't put it on here, but let me go back to my sheet and let you know, this is a good one. Regrets. What regrets do we have right now? And what regrets do we want to subvert or prevent going forward? Okay, now the title will be a lot shorter, but that's going to be the topic for next week. So I encourage you to join the conversation. You can invite your friends in your community to be a part of that. And then finally, as we wrap up, I do encourage you to follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube at Ericka Sallee. If you follow me on Instagram, you can find me at True Synergy underscore. And again, all of those connections can be found on my link tree. So I do encourage you that if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, that you can subscribe to my channel, you can share it out, and then turn the notification bell on so that you are notified when new videos are uploaded. And again, all of the shows from previous weeks are on the YouTube channel. If you just go up to the live button, and you can see all of the shows there, and you can kind of go through the topics, and you can say, oh, I want to watch this, 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 and this. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to go back and check them all out. And so on that note, I appreciate you joining me for this edition of Ignite Your True Self. I am super excited to be having these conversations with you and continuing those on next week. So until I do, I want you to take care of yourselves and yes, be well. All right. So good night, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you happen to be seeing this. I do believe it's the right time, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you again real soon.